So good morning, everyone, and welcome to Kamoka, Corunna, and Chatham. You're here for a session on building a positive learning environment a la carte. And our main host is Mariah Millette. She's been part of the elementary program team supporting second language teachers in the Lambton Kent district for the last 3 years. She, like you, I hope, has been enjoying summer with her kids, camping and spending time outdoors before she returns to King George and Chatham to her passion of teaching core French. She's joined this morning by Kim Montpellier and Morgan Purdy. And Kim is joining us from Corunna, and she teaches the core French at Queen Elizabeth Public School in Sarnia. And Morgan teaches grades 7 and 8 at Wallaceburg District Secondary School. I like you either have a cart or you know someone who has a cart who has moved from class to class. So this is going to be enlightening for all of us. I'm going to turn it over to our hosts, turn my microphone off and my speaker off, but I'm going to be here in the background helping out. If anything comes up, let me know if I can help. But it's all yours. Take it away, gang.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob, for the introduction, and thank you to all of our participants today who are taking one of our last days of vacation to join us this morning in some learning. So, as Rob mentioned, the session will go for about approximately 45 minutes, and then we're going to continue the chat after on Twitter. So you can use the hashtag LKLaunch19 and hashtag LKDSBFSL, where we've got some questions that we'll post, and participants can interact at their leisure over the course of the day, and we can continue to share strategies together. I like this quote. One of our teammates, Sally, shared it with us at one of our end of the year meetings. And I think it's just important to say, like, we're not experts at this. It's just something that we're passionate about. And, you know, we want to make the best learning space possible for our students. So it was something that we wanted to dive into and discuss and look at together. Rod already mentioned that the session's going to be recorded and you'll be able to access it after on the blog. So the goals for today are to talk about the importance of a positive learning environment, identify what that looks like, and then share strategies that can be used to help build a positive learning space for our students. Essentially, the most important thing that we need to remember, the research tells us that a positive learning environment is crucial if we want our students to be successful. So the Safe and Accepting Schools document says it's essential if kids are to succeed in school. Our curriculum states that this type of environment supports not only student cognitive, emotional, social, and physical development, but also their mental health, their resilience, and their overall state of well-being, and that this is what helps them achieve their full potential in school and in life. And then there's also the guides to reflective instruction in core French, and the one on positive learning environment talks about students need to feel secure and safe before they can focus on learning and participate safely. So essentially, kids can't learn if we don't have this in place. So what does it look like? A positive learning environment is one that considers not only the physical space in which we work, but also the social, emotional environment and the learning environment. We know that a positive classroom environment is one where everyone feels safe, included, and accepted, and it's an environment that actively promotes positive behaviors and interactions, and is one of mutual respect. So I invited Morgan and Kim here to share some strategies and ideas and thoughts today around what it looks like for them. We know in our jobs that it can be challenging when you're on a cart moving from classroom to classroom. So I think it was important to talk about what does that look like for us in the situation that we're in. And the first question that I have for the two of you is, how do you know when you've reached this positive space with your students where that there is that mutual respect and kids are feeling accepted and included?
So I'll start. So I would say, so when I started teaching, I was like, a quiet classroom is a well-behaved, positive classroom. But now, as I've got more experience, I realize as long as they're talking productively and in French about what they're supposed to be doing or participating together, the more comfortable they get. And as long as when it's time to get back to work, they do it and they get back to work and they're respectful of me and what I'm saying, I don't mind a little bit of noise. It means they're learning from each other. A positive classroom space is one where you're not afraid to make mistakes. So my thing I always do is every day we start with some sort of oral activity, and I will give them a check mark, which technically goes towards their oral communication mark if they participated. Now I tell them, if you made an effort, you still get that check mark. So then if they make a mistake, they don't have to feel bad about not getting the check mark. I still give it to them because they tried. So my biggest thing is, as long as they're trying and they feel comfortable trying in front of their peers, then I know that my we have a positive environment together.
Great. Kim, what does that look like for you? How do you know you've reached this space with your kids?
I'm just going to snowball off of Corey's chat here. She said students are willing to take risks without being worried. That's exactly what I look for to make sure that I'm doing what I need to be doing on my end. I think that when the hesitant students, the ones that aren't really buying into your program right off the bat, once they start to participate in even the smallest ways, whether it's like raising their hand or wanting to push the cart or even just to go and write on the whiteboard, I think that I'm starting to, or I have achieved that positive environment because they're willing to take the risk and they know that they're safe in the space.
Yeah, those are great points too. I agree. Like the willingness to participate, and then that mutual respect between teacher and student is really key.
And establishing that early on too, like right off the hop, I think is crucial for it to be successful.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great segue into the next part. So like, how do we do this? So we know that this needs to be established at the very beginning of the school year, and especially for us in core French when you're teaching from a cart, because you're teaching the entire school. You're not just having one class over the entire day, and it needs to be very thought out and intentional. And that was like the biggest aha for me this year, and thinking about how I'm going to be doing this going back into the classroom. I was like, okay, so what is it that I really want to do? So today we're going to discuss some of these strategies that we can use, I guess, to help establish this positive space. And we've broken down the session into the three, like social emotional environment, the learning environment, and the physical environment, all of which make up this positive space or classroom environment. So the social emotional environment relates to the intentional actions we take or to make students feel safe, welcomed, and valued. To me, this is the most crucial part. We know first and foremost that the relationships that we build with students are the most important part of building this positive space. So my questions, I guess, my first question around this, sorry, you can probably hear my kids yelling and running around upstairs. How have the relationships you've had with your students impacted your classes, and why do you think this is so important or so impactful?
Well, I'll start. So I find that the more you build that rapport and the more you build those relationships, the more they're willing to learn and willing to, like, it's different when you're a homeroom and you spend an entire day together, and then when you're a core French teacher and you spend those 40 minutes. So you want to make those 40 minutes as like the best that you can. And you have to build those relationships first, or they're just going to see it as, oh, you're just a French teacher, you're in here for 40 minutes, I'll do whatever I want for 40 minutes and then you'll leave. So you need to kind of build those relationships so that the students want to learn and they want to behave in your class, and they want to, like, they'll take you seriously as a teacher.
Yeah, I also see the more you get to know the students on like a personal level. I've shared this before. I do a lot of sports, a lot of coaching, and they get to see me and I get to see them outside of the classroom. And I find the more that I do this, the kids want to make me proud and they want to show me that they can succeed. And I think that's because they know me more than just the core French teacher. Now they're seeing me on the court, or I'm going to one of their dance recitals, and it's becoming more real. So they want to show me that they are going to succeed and they want to do their very best for me.
Yeah, those are really great points. I couldn't agree more. And now that I'm going back into the classroom and it's been a few years, is something that I'm really thinking about and really nervous about too, because I think it takes a long time to really establish those relationships. And so that's why we do have to take the time to do that, and we have to be intentional with it, and it can't just always be in the classroom that we're trying that. So I guess my next question then is, what strategies have you used to help build the relationships with your kids? I know Kim, you mentioned a couple, like being involved in sports. And how do you foster those relationships? So like, what would be your biggest tips for maybe a new teacher or someone who, like me, who hasn't been in the classroom for a few years, going back in? Like, what do you recommend? What do you think?
So I'm still also learning, but I decided this year that I'm going to spend a lot of time at the beginning of the year just talking about them. So I'm kind of the person who panics if I don't start teaching my French fast enough that I'm never going to finish it, nothing's going to get done, and blah, blah, blah. So then I decided this year, I said, I need a new strategy, and I went to the States and I bought a couple books that had like 500 questions about you, and I'm thinking about having a question of the day, and maybe even as we, like, they can share with a partner, they can share with me if they want, they can just to learn about them. A lot of kind of like tribes activities, just things to build relationships between each other and to build relationships and rapport with me. And I know it's a struggle for teachers who just immediately want to get in and start teaching and doing things. But that's something I need to learn for myself this year that I think will really help as the year goes by. Because I was talking to Mariah about it before, I teach only grade 7, 8. So all the 7s come to me from like 3 or 4 different feeder schools. So I haven't had a chance to meet them at all until they start that grade 7 year. And then I only have them for grade 7 and grade 8, and then they're gone. So I need something, because I don't have from kindergarten to grade 6 to get to know them and get to know how they work, who they are, what they like. So that's kind of going to be my main focus in September, is just getting to know them, getting to know what they like, and those sorts of things.
Yeah, I like that. I would often do something similar where every day when kids would come into class, the first thing I would ask them, and we would build up to doing this in French, was what did they do the night before? What did they do on the weekend? So then I would get to know the students, and then I could ask them, oh, how was that hockey tournament on the weekend? Or I heard you had a dance competition last night. How did it go? Because then they get to like you as a person. And like Kim was saying too, then they just want to, they want to do well for you because they like you, right?
My biggest strategy is the names. I try and hammer out everyone's name by the end of the first 2 weeks, because they're absolutely mind blown when I can walk down the hallway and I know them by name, and it's meaningful to them, right? And even just small things like talking about who got voted out of Survivor the night before, like it shows them that I'm a real person, and they love that, and it goes a long way.
Yeah. I agree. And like finding it, so if they're interested in hockey, then like building that into the like using those student interests and building it into the program, so then they're learning about things that they're excited and passionate about, makes a world of a difference too. And then obviously like being involved, like I used to play ball hockey at recess with all of my intermediate kids, and the biggest reason was I had a group of students who really didn't like French. It was my first year in the building, and my goal was to get those kids, if I could catch them and hook them and get them coming to class, even just to stop maybe causing problems intentionally, then I can get the rest of the class in easily. So awesome. So another part of building the social and emotional environment involves building a sense of community. So around French language learning in and outside of our classrooms. So I've got a couple questions for this one as well. I guess the first one is, what way or how do you build this sense of community between students in your classroom to help them feel safe, included, and to foster that atmosphere of mutual respect where collaborative learning can happen?
So I usually, whatever activity we're doing, I'll model it first. And then I give them an opportunity to do it with like an elbow partner or someone in the room before they have to. And then I give them the choice if they want to say it out loud, like individually to me. And then that way I just find, okay, so they said it, like they heard me do it, then they said it to someone else. So then usually by the third time, they're more comfortable and willing to participate. And once again, my biggest thing for them is I always say, if you make an effort, like we're going to be okay. And some of them don't realize that. They just think like, well, I suck at French. I'm like, well, did you do what was expected of you? And did you try? And they're like, yeah, and you're fine. So it's just, we need to build that like positive attitude towards French so that they feel better about being in that French, like our French community.
Absolutely.
I was going to say also it just boils down to setting those early expectations. And again, piggybacking off of what Morgan said, I use the CFR wheel and showing them like where they should fall on that ladder. Like, I'm not expecting you to come out a fluent French speaker. This is what I'm expecting of you, and it is realistic for the level that you're at, and we're going to do it together. I also show them that I make mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes. If they see the teacher making mistakes, then they feel a little bit safer, and it's okay when it's their turn to make a mistake. And also establishing that mutual respect, and that when somebody is talking, you're listening, and vice versa. Yeah.
I agree. And to piggyback on that too, like that I think is also very intentional. Like at the beginning of the year, we will have discussions as a class as to like, what does this look like? And with every grade, because if we want to expect it from them, then it has to be taught, and it has to be, we are learning to work in small groups. We are learning to, and then establish what that success criteria looks like. So kids know exactly from the beginning what that expectation is, and they've established it when we've created it together, and it's been a class discussion, they're going to be more likely to remember it, and we can always refer back to it.
Yeah. And I was, just to piggyback off the making mistakes one, my students' favorite thing is when I don't know a word and I have to go look it up, because then they're always shocked. They're like, you don't know everything? I'm like, no, I don't. Like, sometimes you throw a word at me and I'm like, word reference. Yes. And then I have to, and they think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well,
and it's lifelong learning, right?
Yeah.
Good. So what are some ways that FSL teachers, or maybe some examples that you have that you've collaborated with other colleagues, administrators, or parents and guardians, so that students see how FSL is supported outside of just that classroom?
Do you want me?
I don't have much for me, really. They give me a space on their board sometimes where I can leave stuff up, or just so that's kind of always there or whatever, but I
think it's good to advocate for that though. Like if you've got a good rapport with your other colleagues in your building, and for me that was my number one thing, is if I've got a good rapport with the people that I work with, the kids see that and they feed off of that. And so if I've got that good rapport with my colleagues, I can say like, look, like, is it okay if I take a little bit of space on one of your shelves and I have a little bit of Gerbil on board? So it's one less thing for me to have to cart around, or, like with my administrator, like not being afraid to approach them and say like, hey, like I'd like to try this idea. What do you think about this? Right. So just being open and keeping that line of communication open.
And then we do our carnival. So then the teachers all of my other colleagues are always super pumped about it, and like so excited for the day it'll finally happen.
Kelly said seesaw as well. That's a good, I always try and get in on the homeroom teachers seesaw to post a few things to keep the parents in the loop.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. Even I've seen teachers who have invited parents in to come help out with different things that they're trying to run in class as well. Anything where the kids are seeing like that outside support as well for the language. And I think it's a mindset, right? Like how we're learning French today is very different than how we learned it as kids. So it's spreading that message, I guess, and helping people see the positives of learning that second language and how it's happening differently. Like we're getting kids to use the language as much as possible in class. Great. So the second component of the positive classroom environments is the learning environment. So these are the instructional actions we take to build the opportunities within our classrooms for students to access the curriculum, demonstrate what they've learned, and to help them become lifelong learners. So essentially we're creating this space where all students can learn French. So it was touched on a little bit by Kim before, but this idea that we need high classroom expectations for our students and clear routines. We're not just, and not just always just the learning goal and success criteria as it relates to the curriculum, but I think also expectations around respect and behavior in the classroom, what it looks like to work in small groups and work with a partner and how that might be different, and having those conversations with the students. It conveys the message to students that we believe in their ability to work collaboratively with others and their abilities to speak French. And this is imperative in moving towards building a classroom environment that's collaborative. So can you give us some examples of how you might set these classroom norms in September?
So I usually start, like, my basic rules are respect yourself, respect others, and respect the environment. So respecting yourself means like no negative talking pot. So I put those three on the board and we come up with ideas about what each one is. I always get the kid who's like, oh, don't pull the flowers out of the garden or something. And we talk about environment, but I more so mean like classroom environment of like you respect someone else's learning space and you respect, and then I keep those three in mind as like September, October goes along. And if someone's like, even has a whole class, something's happening, I'll be like, hey, what's our three, like our three main ones? Because then it's easier for them to remember three than, and it's an easier way as a not homeroom teacher to just put it out there that these are my three things. And when you respect yourself, you're respecting your learning. When you respect others, you're respecting their learning. And then when you respect the environment, you're respecting everyone's learning space and how that goes.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Kim, do you have anything to add?
No, I like everything that you're saying. Alicia mentioned creating the expectations together, so it's essentially the same thing. I think that also gives the students control. Like, if anything happens, you can go back on the fact that, hey, you guys helped me create this. I'm not just pulling this out of nowhere. Like, these are what we decided on. And so it kind of gives them a little bit more sense of responsibility that way too.
I agree. I feel too, at the beginning of the year, like, and Morgan kind of alluded to it early on too, we feel this push to like hop in right away and be like, you know, French right away. And I feel like it's okay to take the time to have these discussions, because if we don't, then we're not, like, then that's when things fall apart later on. If you haven't had these discussions with classroom or with your classes and set up those expectations, then the collaborative learning that we need and that environment that we need in order for kids to be able to be working in small groups and speaking in French and working together can't happen. Awesome. So, before this one, sorry. We also know that kids thrive off of consistency. And so we need to be intentional with the routines that we start each class with. So we can use routines to provide students opportunities to have small successes at the beginning of every class. So minds-on activities that they know what to expect. And when students know what to expect every day, or similar activities are used, it opens up their cognitive load for language tasks to be completed. So they're not having to think about, well, how do I do this activity? Because it's the same activity that they use all the time. So they can be focusing on, how do I use this language structure? What am I trying to say? How can I get my message across? So my question, I guess, for Kim, we'll start with you this time. What types of routines do you use with your classes? And is it the same for your junior and intermediate classes as it is primary? What are your kind of go-to class starters?
So over the years, I've been learning that you're right, the kids do really need that routine. And I kind of work in, I'd say, about 5 to 20 minute intervals, and then I move on. So the kids know right off the hop, I have 2 minutes of quiet transition, and then a 5-minute little entry routine, 10 minutes for the lesson, 20 minutes we're moving on, 5 minutes I'm leaving. So I keep that sort of template for both or all three divisions. It does look different for obviously primary, junior, and intermediate. Primary, it's more so there's a lot more singing and songs, and I still do that in intermediate. However, yeah, I think establishing that routine of knowing that like we're not staying on things for too long and we'll be moving on, it really helps get the kids into that mindset.
For sure. When you talked about, you have like the 2 minutes at the beginning, and then you've got about 5 minutes, I think was what you said about the routine. So like the day-to-day stuff. So what would that type of routine include for you?
So for the junior intermediates, I always do obviously like just calendar items and getting them using the vocabulary that they already know. So les jours de la semaine, les mois. I'll do like an authentic weather period where I'm going on to the Weather Network in French, and they're looking at all these vocab words that they've learned throughout their school career, and they're seeing it in an authentic way. So they're seeing le soleil, and it's actually le soleil today, or tempête. And then for the younger ones, I'll do something more like attendance style, and I'll say like it's a question de préférence. Préfères-tu le chocolat ou la vanille? And then they'll go and find their name, and they're reading that French vocab word, and they're coming up and doing it interactively. So yeah, that's pretty much.
Thanks. What about you, Morgan?
Mine, well, I only teach intermediate at the moment, but mine, depending on what day of the week I see them first. So at the beginning of the year, I have these little like smart board files with pictures and words, and it'll be like, qu'est-ce que tu as fait pendant le weekend? Mm-hmm. And then it'll be J, and then a picture and some words, a picture and some words. And so they know if I have them on Monday, that's their first, always their first question that we talk about. And if I have them on Friday, I have qu'est-ce que tu vas faire pendant le weekend? And then they answer what they're going to do on the weekend. Same sort of idea. We always do a comment ça va, which I know it's pretty basic, but it at least gets them talking. And so with my little check mark system, the longer their sentence, the more check marks they get. So if someone says ça va bien, they get a check mark. If someone says ça va bien parce que je suis content, they get 2. So that kind of encourages them to make a little bit more effort, but then it's differentiated. So if you are not that strong, you still get your check mark. But if you're stronger and you're willing to make more of the effort, or you can make more of the effort, you get your 2 check marks. And then that kind of is always my class starter. And then it gets them talking a little bit refreshed, and then we move on. And it's usually an oral activity based on whatever we're learning. And then sometimes we do a reading or writing or whatever.
Definitely. Yeah, I like a lot of the quick like oral activities. So it's like mind's on, we get there. I'm picturing getting there, and it's like, okay, this is the activity we're going to do. And eventually, once the kids have done it enough, they can pretty much run it themselves, and it gives me time to get anything set up that I need to get set up before we break into the lesson for the day. So I'm thinking like j'ai qui a, but with like the question and answers, or depending on where we are in our learning cycle, it might be like the vocabulary that they're working on at the beginning, and then we're building in like scaffolding that language for them essentially, right?
I also do like the mini prof too. I'm sure a lot of you guys do that. Allowing one student to come and kind of lead that entry routine is great. The kids love that. And I also do like the check marks that Morgan does, and kind of you get an oral communication mark out of that too. Super simple.
Yeah. I'm thinking this year too of doing, taking the speech acts and breaking so every day of the week doing a focus. So like maybe like the first day of the week is like we're working on questions around preferences, and then the second day of the week is always going to be around being able to purchase items or something with numbers, and then the third day is going to be like I might have a calendar or a schedule up, and the question will relate to that. And so if I cycle through, like I was thinking about how so often the kids learn about it in a silo and then they don't get back to it again until the next year. So I was like, how do we get them coming back to this same language and speech acts that they're, so that hopefully they retain it, that they've been using it every week on a regular basis. And so then by the end of the year, hopefully, like it's going to take a lot of work up front and practicing and scaffolding that for them. But then the idea would be by the end of the year, it's like, oh, I've asked, I know how to order something because I've done this with clothes, and I've done this with food, and I've done this with, souvenirs and so many different things. And we always are coming back to it. So it's a lofty goal, but I'm going to see if I can
I like it.
sit down
Yeah.
and try something like that. Oh, perfect. Thanks. Uh-oh. Okay, we'll zoom through some of this. Okay, so another big part of the learning environment is scaffolding the language. So we need to provide language in small, manageable chunks for students as we move them through the gradual release of responsibility. So how do you introduce new words and expressions to your students when you don't have your own classroom? And how do you provide reference materials or supports when you're on a cart? Because when we had a classroom, like with every class, you'd have anchor charts up, you'd have word wall, you'd have, you know, like space to do all of this. So how do you do this when you're on a cart? What I guess quick strategies do you use to support that?
I always have a smartboard file that I can just easily pull up on a USB because I'm not always able to log in myself on their computers. So as soon as they're logged in, I stick my USB in and I have it's like my life. So hopefully I don't ever lose it.
Yep.
But I also, so they'll do like a vocab sheet. We work on one, Quizlet and that sort of thing. We do a whole lot of practice before they actually have to do anything that I'm marking or.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. Kim, do you have any like good strategies for that?
I want to say that I'm a Google Classroom person. I try to be. It's a lot trickier than I thought it would be. So for the older guys, I try to stick with Google Classroom and make that our classroom because we don't have a lot of actual space. But I do work a lot out of duotangs. So if I'm introducing new vocabulary, I'll try and find either a video or a song and print out the lyric sheet and have them sort of use the reading strategies that we've learned to try and figure out what some of these words mean first. Then I'll formally like teach, I guess, what the words are. And so I do a lot of word walls or banque de vocabulaire in their duotangs, and any material that they might need, I try to have a printed copy, or like Morgan, I live for the smartboard, so everything is pretty much on a USB or on their Google Classroom.
Yeah, I've seen some teachers, like, so when they're introducing something new, they'll put it on colored paper, so it's easier to find the file or the paper and the duotang later.
Yeah.
Same with like anchor charts, so like they might tape it up, or sorry, print it out on like a quarter size of paper, and then they have to glue them into their books.
Yes.
So then it's like a visual reminder for the anchor chart, and it's just like, oh, remember we talked about what working in groups looks like, and then they've got that there. This year I'm toying with the idea of creating a website, just using Google Sites as a place to host student things that I want them to go to. So it's like, okay, today we're working on this. I want you to go to the website and this is the video I want you to watch, or this is the clip I want you to listen to, or here's the doc that you need to, access in order to be able to work together today. But again, it takes time and trying it out, and it'll probably fail miserably at the beginning, and that's okay. And it just takes time to figure out what works, I guess. Awesome. All right. So we also know differentiating instruction has a significant impact on the learning environment as well. So essentially, it's adapting instruction and assessment in response to differing student interests, learning preferences, and readiness in order to promote growth in learning. So how do you adapt lessons so that all students have an entry point and the chance for success?
So my always start by modeling. Usually if they see me do it or they can repeat it after me, just sort of getting them comfortable and that sort of thing before making them go off and do it on their own, or pairing. So sometimes if they need a partner, I'll randomly choose partners.
Yep.
And then
and
they think it's random, but I'll have stuck them with someone that is either the same level as they are, or someone who could help that,
depending on what you want them to do, right?
Or
they
what the think task that is. I just randomly, that was my group generator, pop that up. So I just don't like to center anyone out. So I just kind of under the table slyly will do that.
Kim, what do you think?
I think also giving them, I always give options to the kids, and I'll model different ways. Okay, I am expecting a video, but if you're not a video person, that's fine. I'm not either. Here's an alternative. And I'll show different ways that the same goal can be achieved. And also student-centered learning, like asking them, okay, if you're not interested in what I'm doing, what are you interested in? And try and fit that in somehow so that I do have them hooked some way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Like the choice for me too is huge. It's like, okay, we're doing an oral activity today. Like maybe it's a listening one. Here are the different options. You can choose which one you listen to. This is what you need to do with it to show me, and go to it. Or like I want a spoken production, right? And I don't care what app you use. It doesn't really matter as long as I hear you speaking. If you want to present it live, that's fine too. If you want to come to me at recess and present it, like it's your choice, but you need to show me that you can speak it somehow.
I had a kid this year who absolutely refused to record himself saying anything. So his thing was just when he was ready, he came up to me, and if I wasn't working with anyone else, he said it to me and went on his merry way.
For sure.
He hated the sound of his voice.
Yeah.
So he.
Yeah. Nope, I hear ya.
I don't like mine either. So.
Yeah. So the other thing we need to consider is how we correct students and respond to student errors. And this can have a tremendous impact on that positive learning space where students feel safe to take risks and make mistakes. So we need to listen to the messages students are conveying and focus on what they can do. If we're drawing attention to error, it needs to be done in a way that fosters proficiency and preserves student confidence. So do either of you have any tips with how you I guess deal with this?
Well, for writing, so what I will do is I'll have them write whatever they're working on, and they submit it, and I count as technically like their rough draft, and then I go through them all, and I'll pick out the major errors I see, and then I make a Smartboard file with like those examples, and then we go through as a class, and we correct it. So it's never like you made this mistake. It's here's a whole bunch that I saw like
the biggest
58% of you doing, let's correct it. And then they laugh because they're like, that's like the stupidest mistake I've ever made. But they don't reread their work to double check over like they do in English. So then it kind of gives them that was like, and then they have to go back through their own work and make the corrections of whatever. So no one knows if they made that mistake or not. It's kind of in general, these are the biggest mistakes I saw, like the difference between A and N, that sort of thing. And then that way we do it as a whole class and no one's centered out.
Yeah, that's great. Kim?
This was a huge learning curve for me. I am French first language, and so I kind of had the expectation, like I'm going in and I'm speaking my way of speaking, and it was, I quickly learned that I can't just center kids out and say like, no, you're saying it this way and it's this way. And so what I've been picking up is making it as nonchalant as possible. And if they make a mistake while they're speaking to me, I'll just kind of like under my breath say like, oh no, you need like this way, or I'll just like re-say it without saying like, you said this wrong. I'll just repeat it. And most of the time, like they'll pick up on that and they'll re-say it as well, the same way that I've corrected them. And I think that's the best way for me that I've found. They start picking up on their own mistakes.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I think too, trying to ask them like in a question sometimes too helps, both in the written part and in speaking, or doing it whole class like that. Like, is it pronounced this way or this way, to see if they can pick up, because generally they know the proper pronunciation or they know what sounds right. It's just, they just need more practice using it and trying it, right?
So like, once they have that option, they know.
Yeah, once I get those relationships built and they know me and I know them, I kind of like add in some humor, like sarcasm when I'm teaching. So if we're talking like, say they're supposed to say like j'ai dansé, so they know that accent aigu is an A sound. Like I drill it to them. Yeah. So then someone will be like j'ai dansé, and I'm like, like and then we all laugh, and it is kind of centering them out. But once you've built those relationships, and they all do it every time.
Especially with the older ones, they can handle it a little bit more, and they learn to laugh at it too, I find.
So the last component that we're going to look at today is the physical environment. We know we want to make it an inviting place where students want to learn and they feel connected to the language. And this, I would say, is the biggest one that we have challenges with, obviously being on a cart, because we're at the mercy of how the homeroom teacher sets up the space, However, we can find ways to work within these obstacles to make it our own while we're there. And so it's how do we take that positiveness to try and make it ours when we're in that space so that we can do the best of our ability with that. So we want to consider space for all types of learners when we enter the classroom. We know that students need to use the language in order to learn it. And so kids can't talk to one another if they're sitting in isolation. We want to set up the classroom and organize it in a way that promotes collaborative learning. And we also want to consider how we can share and celebrate student work. Students want to see themselves, and they like it when, you know, they're proud of themselves when they look and they're able to see the things that they've done around them. So how do you make the space your own when you enter other people's classrooms in order to best account for the needs of all learners?
So I'll piggyback off what Corey just said here in the chat about moving like desks around. I've done that many times. So if I'm like, I need you, they'll be in rows, and like, I need you in a group of 4, and they just fold their rows in half, and then we make a little group, and then at the end, they know we got to fold them back and put them where they were. Being a homeroom teacher versus being a core French on a cart teacher are 2 totally different spaces. So you have different needs. So I always move things around and just do what I want. I just make sure that when I leave, I left it how I came in.
Absolutely.
It's hard sometimes, and it does take up some of my 40 minutes, but in that like 25 minutes that we got, really, we did a lot of good work that
the quality, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I also use the cart. This year I have a pretty good cart, and I have everything labeled in French. So I'm maximizing everything on my cart. And like, let's say I provide prep in English to them later. If I'm providing art and I have all the art supplies, they're still labeled in French. So they're getting a little bit of French even outside of that classroom space. I also have the conversation with the homeroom teacher before, and I try to like see if there's a schedule we can have where I can have the bulletin board one month, you can have it the next month, or have a section of the room for their duotangs. And usually most teachers are pretty good with just even offering that space before I even have a chance to have the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the idea of like, there's always bulletin boards in the hallways, or a lot of schools have bulletin boards in the hallways. So seeing like taking one of those and maybe every month changing it out, or every few weeks changing it out, so that you can like alternate between classes that way. And I'm also a proponent of moving things around.
The learning commons.
Yeah, like finding spaces, like if the weather's nice, being able to take the kids outside and use the space out there. But for me, it's how can I make, I don't know, find the spaces that I need within, I guess, the constraints of the job. And it's like, okay, if I need to work in small groups, and if like we can't move the classroom that day, then we're gonna go in the hallway and we're gonna work in small groups up the hallway, or we're gonna try and find spaces in the classroom, and you just really try to, you know, take what you can to make that work.
Our librarian in the high school was really good last year, and she was always willing to like let us come down and use it. It was a great space, and she'd even help. She was not French at all, but she was like, whatever I can do, just let me know.
That's great. Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us. And if you're interested, we're going to continue the discussion online after on Twitter. So again, you can follow the hashtag LKLaunch19 or hashtag LKDSBFSL. We've got 5 different questions that'll come out over the course of the day on the hour starting at 10. And just again, so that we can continue to share the strategies and as a place to gather all of those ideas that people have as well. Like if there's something that, you know, you're doing that like you think other people would benefit from, like by all means share, because I think the more ideas, the better, especially as we're trying to plan going back into September.
And sometimes you're the only core French teacher in the building, so it's nice to get other people's ideas.
And I just have to say, I've been watching the back channel discussion, and as rich as the content you've been sharing has been, there's been this other layer of super rich, wonderful ideas that I've sort of done some screen captures of that. But you might want to take a quick browse of that. I'm going to have to shut this room down in just a minute. But the recording is going to be up, so anybody who wants to see it or point to it, you'll be able to do that. But please, those of you in the chat, if you see value in that kind of sharing, join in using these hashtags and share your ideas on Twitter, and they'll be there, you know, archived that people can go back and look at them, reflect on them, and share them. But let me take a moment just to share and thank our presenters once again. Morgan, Kim, and Mariah, this has been wonderful. I know it's a very niche topic, but certainly the strategies that have been suggested about building community and getting everybody involved and leveraging the abilities of the kids and knowing them, it's all been stuff that's relevant for all teachers. So thank you very much for taking the time today.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.